Welcome to Fluency Jams, where your hosts, Steve and Aaron, gather notes from the real world of business and tech. We're talking with leaders and innovators who are making a difference, searching for stories that inspire, challenge, and educate. You're about to enter a dimension, not only of ideas, but of innovation, a journey where no podcast has gone before.
Welcome to another episode of Fluency Jams, where we take business leaders and tech leaders and have conversations that are designed to educate, challenge, and sometimes make us laugh. I'm Steve Taylor, co-founder of Fluency Digital.
And I'm Aaron, and I'm here to hopefully make you laugh. But see, I did words. I'm co-founder of Fluency Digital, also head of sales, Bring Me the News, local news publisher here in Minnesota. And today we're very excited because we're going to dive into the world of cold chain logistics and e-commerce with Jason Park, CEO and co-founder of Coldcart. Jason and his team are tackling one of the trickiest problems in shipping, how to prevent the spoilage of perishable goods. Steve and I are curious to know more about that. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to hear more about Coldcart and your background.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
You co-founded Coldcart after an impressive run at Allstate, but I'm really curious, how did your connection with Matt Salzberg, co-founder of Blue Apron, influence your journey?
I started my career in B2B e-commerce fulfillment for a company called MasterCard, packing, shipping, assembly, and then software and automation to do those things more efficiently. Worked and then transitioned to management consulting at Bain & Company, and worked primarily tech companies. And during the big thing happening at the time in the tech industry was the transition to the cloud, moving away from big server boxes that every company had, and centralizing that with Amazon and Amazon Web Services in a way that's more efficient. And that plays a big role in how we look at Coldcart. And then started the business at Allstate, took that from 0 to 100 million ARR. And that was right around the time that Matt and I reconnected. So we were both at Harvard undergrad together. Matt had, back in 2012, started the company Blue Apron. And I remember Blue Apron coming out and just wondering how you figured that out. You're shipping boxes of vegetables to people's apartments, and doesn't that spoil? Just all kinds of questions, right? And so, of course, they IPO'd for $2 billion. And so I asked them, how did you figure out the boxes? I'm going to ask you that. And I was expecting this big kind of glamorous answer. It's basically like, it was really hard. And it never really got easier. It was prohibitively hard at times. We were putting money into it. And just kind of the nature of what that looked like was just too much overhead, too much specialization, too much infrastructure. And in many ways, mirroring what happened with the tech industry of that transition from decentralized infrastructure to centralized infrastructure. And figured out just through enough of kind of repeated exposure, the universe starts to talk to you through other people and different things. And hearing this kind of very consistent versions of that from people who were very familiar with that, whether in the food industry or pharma, that was really the motivator. And here we are.
Yeah, it's not a good customer experience, right? It was spoiled as Vegas showing up. Did you do some more market research to identify that would be an issue? But how did you find out that it was a greater opportunity?
Like I was mentioning, the universe starts to speak to you organically, and then you start to look deeper into these things. And I think for me, what really made this a business, and then partner with Matt on this, was at the simplest level, market's very big. 3 billion perishable parcels shipped in the US last year. The people who are living the problem describe the problem in very consistent and similar way. And to paraphrase, you need a cell hole and they have hammers. And it gets more interesting than as you go down. Someone to solve this, right? Now, every one of those people, they describe the problem very consistently. And yet they're all solving it very differently. Some are throwing goodies at the problem and lots of staff, all kinds of Excel hacks, companies that are bigger have these, put a lot of custom in-house IT. That's what Socially does what it needs to do. Back in the heyday of zero interest rates and, venture capital is a lot cheaper. These companies were fully vertically integrating at a very early stage. So no real consistent solution. And then furthermore, the players who should be solving the problem we're not solving the problem. Think about Amazon, for example, companies like the traditional e-commerce platforms, the 3PL industry, and happens to be the case that my close friend I found out later was at Amazon and was tasked with creating essentially Coldcart there, and it didn't work specifically because they were at Amazon.
And they're too big and clunky. I mean, there's more bureaucracy. They can't really pivot and react as much as a smaller company, right? It's not as efficient.
This is what was sort of the planting of the Red Sea in terms of there's a business here, somebody should do this, and screw it, it should be me. The helpful wasn't there's that kind of moment is exactly to your point. And here's why it's operationally, if you optimize for perishable parcel shipping, you have to solve both costs and spoilage at the same time. Play that forward, your network of facilities looks entirely different than the optimal network for non-perishables. And then furthermore, the way you handle a package is 180 degrees the opposite. Traditional operations and supply chain, it's all about standardization and centralization and minimizing variation. Succeed more efficiently by doing things the same. And in perishable, if you do that, you will become less efficient. And yet, that's what good operators rightfully learn to do. You have an entire industry of traditional supply chain software solutions that's built to do the opposite of what you need in perishable parcel and make you less efficient. Essentially, what it looked like at Amazon was that he told me at some point, every one of their warehouses was not optimally placed. So they were going to have to build new warehouses. The ROI hurdle rates at Amazon are very high, right? So financially, it never kind of reached the point because it's a specialized problem. And on top of that, this is the type of thing that, and it was like engineers and CTOs are always, correct the business people like me because we think this stuff is so simple, right? But you have an entire tech stack that is architected for repetition and standardization. Yeah. You can't just say, okay, now pack this box every time based on what the temperature is, or ship it with a different carrier every time. You can't do that. So you basically have to start over.
Yeah, you got me convinced. Probably a pretty big need for sure. Sometimes they look for the big giants as leaders in that type of technology, but it doesn't seem like the Amazons, for example, were able to pull it off in the same way. So there's a market opportunity for you to come in. Shipping rates, as we've discussed, are notorious for spoilage, up to 15% sometimes. I'm kind of curious how Coldcart solved the problem, reduce spoilage by up to 50% per shipment. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so the simplest way to think of spoilage in this space is if it delivers late, it's spoiled. Refunded, reshipped. Probably not seeing that customer again. And so how we've been able to tackle spoilage, and when you look at the line graph, it is truly a linear, and at the beginning, a linear relationship all the way down, one of the most linear curves in our business. And how you do that is by customized handling of every individual shipment, treating each shipment differently, which you never do in regular operations, and doing that based on real-time data. All of the variables that can impact spoilage, all the variables that can change every day or even within a day, temperature, how the transportation providers are performing, traffic delays, and Chicago got sort of the norm, but how long is the delay changes? Costs and rates move around, fuel surcharges, and that's just the beginning. Having the data and then act on that data, even the smallest changes in how you handle that shipment have a big impact. So if I can reduce late deliveries by even 1%, and therefore reduce life spoilage refunds by 1%, what's 1% of $1 billion in sales? And so it's certainly a small thing out of very quickly. And so as we mentioned a second ago, that traditional operations will lead you to do the opposite of what you need here. We've built Coldcart to be the opposite of traditional supply chain software. We call it standardized customization. Every single variable in our system that impacts a shipment, some of the ones I just mentioned as examples, can be accounted for in how you handle that shipment, can be optimized for. This is what we're telling our customers. You can create an infinite number of rules for how you'd like those variables to be treated. I may have a different cost tolerance from someone else. I may have different temperature sensitivities for, certain types of products can actually ship through day ground. But we always like to control away that. If we're doing our job right with customization flexibility, our customers are free to make bad decisions. But that's the level of flexibility you have.
Oh, that's incredible. You've talked a lot about progress over perfection in the past. Could you elaborate on how this mindset has played out in Coldcart's development?
Yeah. So when we think about that mindset at Coldcart, it refers to not letting unknowns stop you from moving forward. And
Any startup.
tell me what unknowns are knowns. Otherwise, it's not really a startup. You're not really doing anything innovative. And so for us, what that means more specifically is being clear about what you know, which sounds obvious, but it's easy to not pay attention to that or take that for granted. And then for the things you don't know, challenging them to see which ones are important enough to change your answer. And if you're doing that right, very few things actually meet that criteria. You think about the 80-20 principle, 20% of my effort gets me 80% of the result. And then for those unknowns that are important enough to change your answer, hypothesize, test, validate.
And see that you've scaled to cover 99% of the U.S. population with just 15 fulfillment centers. That's a huge achievement for a young company. What were the key strategies that helped Coldcart grow so quickly and with such a small team?
It's a journey, right? And sometimes you're at the top of the world, sometimes you're at the bottom and rarely in between. I'm fortunate to have that group of people that I can tag along with every day. And I say, I think this kind of relates to the last point is that if you're focused too much on exact answers, then you miss opportunities. And kind of that's another form of progress over perfection. I like this analogy of reaching the top of a mountain. I can see the mountain on the horizon. I know what direction it's in, but what happens on the path along the way? That's what I don't know. I thought there was a bridge here. No bridge. Okay, what do I do? I got to figure something else out. It's never a linear path. And not just accepting that, but expecting it. The mountain itself doesn't change, but the path you take to get there does change. And so in the case of Coldcart, we know where we're going. Our direction has not changed fundamentally since we started because the problem remains a problem and the need remains the need. But when we run into barriers along the way, which is all the time, break them down, we can solve the pieces. And the hardest part of that, though, was like, it's not just getting it done. You could get a lot done and convince yourself that you're making progress, but it's really holding what we do accountable to that direction. Are we solving this problem in a way that moves us forward, or are we creating other problems? And that mindset embedded into everything we do. It can make decision making feel more difficult because customers ask you for stuff all the time, and easy just to say, yeah, can do all those things, right? But we are very disciplined. I say very hard on ourselves, frankly, about, all right, if we could do something, would we do this if a customer did not ask for this? Can we envision and how would we sell this to someone else? We have a bingo board, call it product roadmap because it's all the things we know that we're going to need. And is this on a bingo board? Is it close to a bingo board? Does it move us in the direction of a bingo board or not?
That's great. And I really like the bingo board. I think we're going to incorporate into that in Fluency. So, looking ahead, what's next for Coldcart?
The right answer here is AI, and that is the answer for us too. It's funny, just as a quick aside, I get investors or people in our ecosystem are like, why don't you, market yourselves with AI? That's the thing to do right now. And we've deliberately chosen not to do that because we're introducing a new technology concept into an industry that hasn't had it before.
Yeah.
So in many ways, it already can feel overly academic or kind of overly ephemeral. We're trying not to overcomplicate that message for people because this is already an upward industry shift. But what reason I bring that up is that when you look at AI startups raising millions of dollars before they have any revenue, what they're doing is they're training models and human analysts running these models, and they're iterating to improve these models. The only difference between what they're doing and what we are doing is that our models are being trained through operating a real business with real data. And so there will be a moment, and you'll see this, where, and we actually do own Coldcart. We don't own Coldcart.com, Coldcart.ai. There'll be a moment at which we announce that to the market. And at that point, it'll be very real, very indisputable, and provable to a general audience. And so that was what's snatched at a very high level. Everything happening below the surface is setting those wheels in motion.
What advice would you give to your younger self or all those would-be entrepreneurs out there that are looking to start the next Coldcart?
First, I just think about this tech thing a lot. And, the son just turned 3. I think about that in relation to another human being. I think if I had to pick one, when I'd say is things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Especially in college, they have plans and they're very specific. And I do investment banking. And that's the one to achieve a very specific definition of success.
Yeah.
And that's not how life worked. I ended up in Chicago for a random set of reasons. This was a place I sought to live coming out of college, and yet ended up going to business school here. Met my wife here. Son was born here, and in some ways, I was telling my friend, like, everything that gives me joy in my life came as a result of something that I didn't plan, which was moving to Chicago. Everyone thought I want to live abroad or something like that. And I followed my plan and everything had gone exactly what I wanted to. Might be in a very different place right now, but I'm still like where I'm at. Okay, having the flexibility to adapt and iterate based on what you learn. And, you need to have a plan. I'm not saying you don't have a plan, just go, plug that to your pants, but on that plan, but also, it doesn't need to be mutually exclusive with open-mindedness, treating the things that happen to you as opportunities. All this stuff is very easy to say, and if you use it in retrospect, it's hard to do in the moment. I can tell my younger son, but that's something I've been thinking about a lot, just in terms of life and reflection.
That's great advice. Embracing the opportunity that comes your way, as well as having that plan, but being flexible enough to see where the gifts are. That's awesome advice. So I appreciate that. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing a little bit of the Coldcart story.
Well, thanks so much, Steve. Thanks so much, Aaron. I really appreciate the invitation and the chance to spend some time jamming out with you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's very impressive. It was very nice meeting you too.